One of my Language Therapy Advanced Foundations members asked me the other day how early you can start working on complex sentences with students in language therapy. So my answer to her was that you can start way earlier than you think. Kids are using complex sentences when they're in kindergarten. So actually, you can start integrating some of these concepts into your language therapy even when kids are in preschool. And when I say that, I do not mean that you should be sitting there doing worksheets and having kids try to write sentences when they're in preschool. The way that I help SLPs in their language therapy is through a 5-component system that supports vocabulary. Those 5 components are syntax, semantics, phonology, morphology, and orthography. And the program is primarily designed for students who are ready for some of that more academic work, who are starting to learn to read. So at least in kindergarten, first grade, on through 12th grade. So really supporting that language strand of the reading rope, focusing on things like complex sentences and those things that are really going to support high-level comprehension, that are going to support writing. And sometimes people ask me, what if I have a caseload that does include some kids in preschool? Can I use your framework in preschool? And I tell them that the majority of the things that I do in Language Therapy Advanced Foundations are more appropriate for those older kids that are ready to start working on reading and writing and some academic work. But if you have a mix of kids on your caseload, maybe you serve preschool through 3rd grade and you're interested in the program, you could use my framework with some of those older students. And then for the preschoolers, what you can do is that, yes, you do want to be more play-based, but a lot of the things that I show you in Language Therapy Advanced Foundations can be brought to play-based therapy. Obviously, you don't want to be doing things like worksheets and things like that, but you can think about those things that you're doing with your older students and figure out how to incorporate some modeling and facilitation into your play that is going to work on things like complex sentences. So I always tell people when I give things in a worksheet format, it's not because I want you to just be sitting there drilling worksheets with your students. It's because the worksheet is what's going to help me transfer the information from my brain to yours. Ideally, what I hope people do when they come into the program is learn strategies and protocols that they can eventually store in their head so that they could replicate the activity with a pencil and a piece of paper or a dry erase board and markers, or even pull it into a play activity, especially when it comes to syntax. We want to make sure that we are thinking about these more advanced language skills. I can't tell you how many times I've had SLPs come into my programs and they're working with students in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, all the way through high school, and they say to me, these students still don't have these underlying skills that they need, and everybody has just moved on without them in the curriculum. And I wish somebody would have addressed these things in the earlier grades. You can absolutely start to incorporate things like syntax and morphology into your therapy, and you absolutely should be doing this in the early grades. Sometimes you can be working on a more advanced skill without expecting the child to be able to produce it perfectly. That is how we learn language. We wouldn't want to tell parents to stop modeling language with their infant or their toddler just because that infant or toddler can't go back and forth with a full dialogue and conversation yet, because we know that giving exposure and facilitation to those more advanced concepts is how they're learned. So we want to start thinking about complex sentences in those early grades, and I show you a framework for doing that in Language Therapy Advanced Foundations. In the program, I go through a complete framework for language therapy that helps SLPs streamline things so they don't have to spend hours and hours planning, and so they can make sure that they get the biggest bang for their buck in their sessions so that they know that they are setting their students up for success. To learn more about the program, you can go to drkarenspeech.com/language therapy.